Hey everyone, after sitting back and looking at all my figures that I've acquired over the last 6 months, I realized that I have a figure that is oddly enough not a grail figure of mine, and yet I can't help but stare at it over and over again and yet feel happy that I have it. Everyone has a favorite figure in their collection, whether they have 1 figure, 10 figures, or 100 plus figures. One always tends to stand out that gives you that warm fuzzy feeling when looking at it. Now as to why someone makes a figure their favorite, it can be a variety of reasons. The figure could be a favorite character from an anime, a manga, or a game. Or perhaps they have some form of emotional attachment to the character, because collecting waifus is a thing. Or maybe the figure just looks breathtaking. I've realized that I have many favorite figures, which is pretty obvious because most people don't buy figures they don't like. But my favorite one is one I least expected after reviewing all my collection. But before I go into my big reveal, I'm gonna go over my 3 runner-ups, and believe me, picking these 3 was hard enough, so let's get started. Okay, let's pick up the pace. Going over the first runner-up, this figure's my first grail figure, one that I wanted even before I started figure collecting. And this figure is Ren Tosaka's Unlimited Blade Works 1/7 scale figure made by Good Smile Company. First off, I want to say that there's not enough Ren Tosaka figures. Ren is actually my favorite character out of the Fate series and my favorite tsundere, and I feel that there's not enough scale figures of her. So what makes this figure good in my books? Well, aside from being obsessed with Ren, I love how they stylized the traditional outfit and put a lot of detail in the painting and the shading. Another important thing that attracts me to this figure is the flowing hair. For some reason, many anime figures get blasted with a gust of wind that makes their hair explode in all directions, and I love this. And lastly, I love the base. Every time I look at it, it gives me nostalgia. It makes me want to watch Unlimited Blade Works again. This figure came out 10 years ago, so another thing that makes it special to me is the fact that I actually got my hands on it when I didn't think I would. So overall, why do I love this figure? Well, she's a waifu, and I feel that this is her best figure. Enough said. Now moving on to the next runner-up, this figure appeared in my last unboxing, so I won't spend too much time going over it, but to kill the suspense, it's Raphtalia from Rising of the Shield Hero 1/7 scale figure from Kotobukiya. There's a lot of reasons why I love this figure, and one of those reasons is I started collecting manga at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, and the first series that I picked up was Rising of the Shield Hero. I had no idea what it was about, and I liked fantasy stories, and despite its flaws, Rising of the Shield Hero is one of my favorite mangas. Raphtalia quickly becomes one of those lovable supporting characters, and this figure does her justice. This Raphtalia figure has a near perfect sculpt and a wonderful matte paint, and her base is so well done. Packaging my history with the series and how well this figure is made, it's easy to understand why she was picked. Now the last runner-up, or shall I say runner-ups, this one was hard for me to choose, so I chose both of them. It's Yae Sakura, rather the Apex Mandarin Gown 1/8 scale Yae Sakura figure, and the Mihoyo Flame Sakitama 1/8 scale Yae Sakura figure. I'm a huge fan of the Honkai Impact figures, and both of these Yae Sakuras caused me to stare at them for hours and hours. Honkai Impact is a game I do play, so I'm attached to the fact that I actually get to play the character. Plus her character design is amazing, and the figure designers really went all out putting these 2 figures together. Both of their bases are unique. The paint and color of the figures stand out, and the detail of the outfits are breathtaking, and the pose of the figures really catch your eyes. These figures would be the obvious favorite if you asked anyone who knows me, and I can spend a whole video talking about these figures, but in the interest of time, let's move on to my favorite figure. So who holds the crown to my favorite figure? Well, let's reveal her outline, and maybe it's obvious to who this figure actually is. But if you haven't guessed it, it's the Princess of the Gears, Dizzy from the game Guilty Gear, or the many mobile games who had collaborations with Guilty Gear. Now at this point, I imagine that a lot of you are scratching your heads right now trying to figure out why. So taking a step back, I've played some of the Guilty Gear games, but what really brought my attention to her at first was a mobile game called Epic 7. This is a game that I played daily, and she had a collaboration there, and I collected her, and I use her character often. But despite Epic 7 having a lot of great looking characters, they actually don't release figures like other mobile games. So I picked up Dizzy to fill that gap. When I first got her, I would frequently go out of my way to look at her. I would be at my computer or watching TV, and I'd be like, you know what? It's been an hour since I last looked at her. Better go check on her to see how she's doing. This brings me to her design. Let's start with the wings. Dizzy has 2 wings that transform into her guardians. One of them is known as Necro, and looking at the wing, I love the ruffles and the fabric tears and the gradient paint job across his outfit. Just staring at him is eye candy because there's so many layers of detail here. And on top of that, his robe extends out into feathers of the wing, which is really cool. Next, we can look at the wing of Udine. Her dress is woven around her body as you easily get caught staring at her smooth skin and her flowing hair, which I love. The light blue color of this wing is perfect, and it doesn't blend into Dizzy's blue hair, making the figure not feel overpowered with one color. And to add to it, Udine's hair spreads out into feathers, making up the tips of the wing. Lastly, we can go over Dizzy, starting with the pose. I love the arched back pose. It definitely adds some uniqueness than having her just stand there straight. It makes her feel almost hesitant or nervous, which plays very well into her character. As for the outfit, I like how the buckles, the seams, and the studs on her outfit make it really stand out. I also love how they convey the tension on the straps of her legs, and she also has a really cute butt, which is a bonus. The base, I know, all my runner-ups had detailed bases and her base is pretty basic. while it would be awesome for her to have a detailed base, I'm okay with this one. Dizzy has so much going on up top, I didn't even notice her base. Let's move on to her face, starting with her hair. I love the level of detail in the sculpt and the painting of this hair. I feel that Alter put a lot of attention into the smallest details on this figure, and I really like how this hair is done. I find for a lot of figures, the hair just feels very melted or not very detailed, but for this figure, you can really see the fine lines in her hair. And lastly, the facial expression. Something about it hits me every time when I look at it. I just feel like it conveys a lot of emotion, which is why I find myself looking at her face often. So at this point, there's probably a lot of people thinking right now, well, she seems like a nice figure, but who the F is Dizzy? This is a common question I get from my friends, at least when they see my figures. So let's answer that. Dizzy is a gear from the game Guilty Gears. Gears are known as an artificial race that was forged by fusing human and animal DNA using magic. Gears were primarily used as a weapon of war until a gear known as Justice broke free of human control and started a rebellion against the humans. Dizzy is a daughter of the Gear of Justice. But as an infant, she was abandoned and found by an elderly couple. But after 6 months, her body grew up and she grew wings and a tail. The villagers, realizing that she was a gear, tried to kill her, but the elderly couple hid her in the woods, where she would stay in isolation for a while. Now Dizzy is a soft, loving, and caring person, and unlike most gears, she's not violent. But her wings, Necro, the personification of violent intent, and Udine, the personification of self-preservation, take control of many situations to protect her. This causes Dizzy to detest her wings, because she's afraid of hurting others. Ultimately, she longs for human contact, and looks for a friend who would accept her for who she is. Now through the multiple games, she's hunted by bounty hunters, makes friends, possessed by Necro, retains control only to lose it again to both Necro and Udine, eventually gains control again, falls in love, has a child, and through a whirlwind of other events, has a happy ending, at least until the next game comes out. If you want to learn more about her, pick up the games. Well, that wraps things up. What are your favorite figures, and what are your runner-ups? I would love to know, since a quarter of my figures were introduced to me by other people expressing their love for a figure. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, I hope you all found this video entertaining, and have a great day.